All right. Welcome to another expert interview. Every time I do this, I'm always geeking out because of who I get to talk to and the questions we get to ask. Today's guest is no exception. Now a best-selling author, which is exciting to add to the list of amazing things Dave and his family have accomplished in the last decades. As always, I like to have my guests introduce themselves because I probably can't do it justice. So, Dave, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Let me turn it around and I'm going to start by asking you a question, Devin. So, if I could help you add a zero to your net worth, would you put me on your Christmas card list forever?
100%. And I love that question. So yes, I'll send you a Christmas card, a birthday card, a Thanksgiving. You get every card every holiday.
Obviously, all of us would. And believe it or not, most people don't actually feel that way. They may say that they do, but for 80% of the world, mediocre is good enough. And even for the top 20%, 80% won't do what it takes to just add a zero. So only about 20% of the 20% will, and that's 4%. So I've always realized that it's one out of every 25 of us that are on this call today that are actually going to do something. And to be honest, it took me 85% of my life to figure it out. And about 16 years ago, my two sons and I created the Stech Family Office because we were adding our first zero and we wanted to add another. So our family office primarily does two things. We invest and we educate. So for us, investing fills our financial mandate, which is more income, more net worth, and so on. And educating others is how to just fill our fulfillment bucket. So on the financial and the fulfillment bucket, we pretty much got it we've got it covered. And what we're basically doing is teaching business owners how to add a zero to their net worth. They can either do it with us or on their own. It doesn't matter to us. At the end of the day, we want them to learn because what you don't learn, your kids will inherit. But there's zero pressure, there's zero obligation. We've done 12 investment funds and five special purpose vehicles over the years, and our management fee is zero because we don't feel, and I've always taught my sons, you should never be paid on effort. You should only be paid on results. And if you don't perform, you don't deserve to get paid. I think we're the only ones in the world that have a 0% management fee because that's our thesis. That's our belief system. And that's how we believe we can outperform. So that may have been more than you wanted to hear, but I thought it might be helpful for you to hear that.
No, I love it. We get to spend a lot of time together. We're just in Dallas together as well. And I love your perspective. But this hasn't always been the case, right? Tell me more about the family office and there's a trailer park to super success. Like, I'd love to hear some of that story.
Yeah, I started a trailer park for the first 20% of my life. My parents both had eight great educations. My mom was one of 10 kids. My dad was one of four. The 14 siblings had 60 children. I was the only one to go to college. And so for me to be where I am is ridiculous. My two sons and I run our Stech Family Office. And basically, we've got three pillars. The first pillar is research. We invest a fortune every month in data and statistics and research to figure out one thing and one thing only: what's coming next. Because if you can figure out what's coming next, you have the unfair competitive advantage. And until you know that, you can't reasonably place intelligent, targeted bets in your businesses or your investments. So research is our unfair competitive advantage. And that's pillar number one. The second pillar is investing. And what do we invest in? Three things. We invest in real estate. We invest in private lending on real estate, which at this point in the market cycle is a lot better than investing in real estate. And then we invest in early stage technology companies and early stage funds. So think Airbnb or Uber. Technology growth is exponential. It's eating the world. So we launched two venture funds. We've invested in 81 companies to date over the last 4 years. And there are a number of those companies that have become unicorns, like one of my son's companies has. So that's really it. Real estate, private lending, early stage technology. We don't invest in stock market or oil and gas or precious metals for one reason. We can't control the outcome. We have no clue what's going to happen to Apple stock tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen to the price of oil and gas. We don't know what a barrel of oil is going to be or what gold's going to be because we can't control the outcome. And I learned that lesson the hard way. And you've heard me talk about this when a well-meaning friend referred me to his broker at Merrill Lynch, who successfully made me broker. He turned my 401k into a 201k. And if I were still there, I'd be in special K. So at the end of the day, I realized until we get off the Wall Street and into the Main Street, we as a family will never be successful. Until we become entrepreneurs and not employees, we'll never be successful, which then led to our third pillar. If that first pillar is research and the second pillar is investing, the third pillar has to always be optimization. All of us have to optimize ourselves before we can optimize our family or our causes or our legacy. So we believe that there needs to be 7 things. You've got to have 7 things in order to optimize your family. And if you don't have a mission, vision, values, strategies, objectives, key results, priority initiatives, those 7 things will drive your family like they do your business. And so our family office mantra is to do fewer, bigger things with fewer, better people through fewer, deeper relationships, and work only with the Devin Sizemores of this world, not the masses of asses. In fact, we purposefully try to eliminate those folks from our life. There's 8.2 billion people on the planet, and you don't need many people to be successful. You just need the fewer betters.
That's awesome, Dave. I appreciate you sharing that story because I know your journey, there's no one falls on top of the mountain, right? You climb there, you stumble there, you break through stuff. And through that, what I love about the time I've had to spend with you is your education pillar is so prevalent, right? Like how you provide value to people through that unfair advantage. I love it because I'm always learning stuff. Every time we sit there, whether we're sitting eating food or I'm listening to you talk on a TV series, like there's always a nugget in there that I find value in. I want to focus in on private lending. Why private lending and how did you decide that was somewhere you guys were going to play?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I got to tell you, we ended up there by accident, but thank God we ended up there. So I always believe that in a word, it's all about timing. Timing is the most important word in investing, period. There isn't really another word that is even close to competing with timing. If you can figure in when to get in and when to get out, that is how wealth is created. It's not cash flow. All the other things that the gurus teach you that purportedly will get you rich by tomorrow at 4 o'clock, it's all untrue. It's all about timing. It's the most important word in investing. And it turns out timing is the most important word in life. You and I met at the right time. You meet your spouse at the right time. You have your children at the right time, your business relationships, you name it. Great timing, only when combined with purposeful action, creates what I call leapfrog moments. That is when you add a zero. I bought justaddazero.com, I don't know, 20 more, maybe more years ago. Why? Because I felt like you can either stay small and keep it all, or you can go big or go home, or you can play in the middle and just add a zero. So that's basically what we've done. In private lending anyway, it happened in 2011, and that became what I call our leapfrog moment. We were in Tampa. When I say we, it was my son Josh and I that were in Tampa, and we were in this mastermind event. And I'm telling this story, the kind of woe is me story, about a couple of things that had happened to us that didn't go well. So we started by flipping homes, and we had flipped 73 homes in 14 months in Las Vegas, the foreclosure capital of the world, and made a 60-ish plus return. And then all of a sudden, the state of Nevada instituted a foreclosure moratorium, like during COVID, the eviction moratorium. There was a foreclosure moratorium because all of these homeowners were being preyed upon. We weren't, but we had 7 figures in cashier's checks. We're at the auction, and all of a sudden, inventory went to zero. I get a call, and that was our second moment. Our first moment was all of a sudden our business went from booming to bust. And then I get a call from the bank, and we bought a 5,500 square foot home that was built in 2009 for $2.8 million. We bought it fully furnished for $618,600, and it had a full panorama view of the Las Vegas Strip. That became our first vacation rental, which happened in the first year of Airbnb, coincidentally. Guess what? The hotel industry felt threatened by vacation rentals back in 2009. They hired a lobbyist to petition city councils around the country to pass prohibitions against term rentals. And we literally found ourselves on the 5 o'clock news. Basically, what they said, we were operating a party house, which we weren't. We had all 5-star reviews. Our neighbors were happy, and we didn't buy in an HOA. And the real estate commissioner for Clark County filed a cease and desist order upon us on our 2 then vacation rentals. And all of a sudden, we had 29 days worth of fines at $1,000 a day, and they would continue in perpetuity. So we had to sell the property, pay a $29,000 fine. And I always say, at some point, you've got to decide in your life that you're going to be the victor, not the victim, no matter what happens to you. And those 2 back-to-back wins that were forced into lessons, not losses, made us so much smarter. And then I'm at this mastermind. I'm telling these 2 stories. And this guy by the name of Mike from Boston says, "Hey, Dave, why don't you loan me some of that money for a deal I have to close on this Tuesday?" And I said, "Mike, I've never done a loan. I don't even know what you're talking about." The short version is I did the loan for 31 days, made a 59% return on my first deal in my Roth self-directed IRA tax-free. And I turned to my sons and I said, "I don't know about you, but I'm thinking that somebody's going to throw us in jail. It can't be this easy. It can't be this good." And the important part of the story is that my son Josh was in that room while I was presenting. 2 years later, he becomes one of the 4 founding partners in a little startup called Lending Home, which got to billion-dollar status when he left, and became rebranded as Kiavi, and now it's reportedly worth $3 billion. And my Roth self-directed IRA was one of the first investors. How crazy is that? You don't even know how to spell private lending, but if you're at the right place at the right time with the right people, not only can your life change for the better, but it can take you to a place that you never dreamed you'd be. And that's where we are.
Man, there's a lot to unpack. What was just shared there. But one thing you talked about was timing. And so is it the right time to be a private lender? Isn't there a lot to figure out? It does seem hard and risky, I think, if we just think about private lending. So talk to me about, is it the right time? Why private lending?
Yeah, you just, I think, asked 3 questions. So let me unpack each one of those. Is it the right time? Is there a lot to figure out? Is it too risky? First, from a timing standpoint, I compare everything in private lending, since it's private lending on real estate, to real estate, and is now the right time to invest in real estate. And I don't really think it is, because prices are at an all-time high. Interest rates, except for the 1980s, are at an all-time high. Affordability is at an all-time low. So it's hard for me to believe that there's broad-based tailwinds in real estate. There's plenty of headwinds. So it's all about pockets of opportunity. That's where we are in real estate. The best pocket of opportunity right now is private lending. Think about it. In real estate, you've got to find it, figure it, fund it, fix it, fill it, and flip it. The 6 F's of real estate. Whereas in private lending, all you have to do is 1 F. You got to fund it. And when it comes to your other question about the risk, there's only 3 things that you need to vet: the market, the borrower, and the deal. And so private lending is so much easier than real estate. And I wish I would have started earlier. But the fact that we've started where we did, when we did, has allowed us to add a 0 or 2. And of course, when you're building billion-dollar companies like my son is, you can add a lot more zeros. But the big question that I always like to ask folks to help them understand what the opportunity is here is, I'm going to start with a question for you. Devin, have you ever gotten a loan for either your home or a rental property?
Yes.
Okay. And did they basically give you a financial proctology exam that took way too long before they actually approved you?
100%. Yeah. Jump through pull back all the curtains. Yeah, for sure.
And did you then pay like clockwork on the first of every month?
Yeah, that's what we're trained to do.
And did they call you every month to remind you, hey, don't forget, like you have the last several months or years, did they call to remind you to do it?
Don't have to. It's just part of what we do.
How crazy is that? How would you like a business where you do something once, make it difficult for people, and get paid monthly on the first of every month for the next 30 years? It's like the best business on the planet. And the only difference between them and me is that I make it a lot easier for people to borrow. I work with the fewer betters, not the masses of asses. My terms are shorter, my returns are bigger, and we're able to generate double-digit passive recurring income tax-free. It's like cheating, only legal. And that's really, I think, the message that people need to understand when it comes to private lending. It's easy, you can do it too, and you don't have to have this big wad of cash to start. We didn't, and we ran out of money pretty quickly, and we figured out how to broker loans and we figured out how to raise a fund. But it all starts with doing your first loan, and it's not that difficult.
That's awesome. Like, I mean, look good there because the book's behind you. And so that's where I started to understand your approach and what you do is working with you on the book. And now, fast forward to it being published in the world, Just Be the Bank is there, bestseller status in 3 categories on the Kindle book, and I think 2 categories on the paperback. And you were ranked really high on the 3rd category. It's running, it's off to the races. And in the book, I know you go deep into a lot of the things in the private lending world. And it's built around a workshop you have as well. So talk to us about the book and the workshop and how we can learn more about private lending.
Yeah. All right. First the book, and then we'll talk about the workshop because actually the workshop began before the book. People have been asking me for as long as I can remember, or at least telling me, dude, you got to write a book. You just got to write a book. And I always used to say, I am too busy making a fortune to try to teach other people how to make a fortune. I don't have time to write books. I'm too busy doing it. And so we wrote this book really as part of our legacy library. The idea that what you don't learn, your kids will inherit. And so we need to make sure that we build in our legacy library private lending as the core way to generate passive, recurring, double digit tax-free income. And so that's why we put this book together really for our family first and our extended family like you and others second. So it's all about, if you think about it, trying to figure out what is it that you're going to talk about in the book. And you may remember this, Devin, but originally we thought, here's our subtitle, How to Be a Successful Private Lender to Real Estate Investors. And then as we started writing the book with your help, we realized that it's more than that. The book needs to rewire your brain to win the money game, to beat Wall Street, and make double-digit returns. That's what you need to figure out. And the book is all about that. Whereas the workshop is all about learning how to do it, which is easier, as I said, than people think. So over 2.5 virtual days, we used to do it live. Now we do it virtual, thank God for COVID, because they taught us that teaching a workshop is actually better online. You don't have to spend a day traveling on the front end and a day traveling on the back end. You don't have to buy 2 airline tickets for you and your partner. You don't have to stay in a hotel. You don't have to take 2 days off work. What if you could learn it virtually and become successful in 2.5 days where you compress decades into days? So that's how the book started. It was bass backwards. And it all started because a successful business owner was making great active income and he had no clue how to have his money work for him. And he said, Dave, you've learned everything and have probably done everything in real estate. What would you do? And I said, I wouldn't do real estate because you got to learn the 6 F's and they're all different disciplines. If you could learn one and do it well, you wouldn't have to deal with tenants and toilets and trash. And I love the quote by Warren Buffett. Many of you have heard to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. But what most people have not heard that Warren is famous in my mind for saying is if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will literally work until you die. And I don't know of a better way to generate passive recurring income tax-free than private lending, which you can't do in real estate because there are so many things to learn and so many moving parts. And oh, by the way, you got tenants and toilets and trash to deal with. I love real estate. Don't get me wrong. I just don't love it now because of where we are in the market cycle. And if you remember, Devin, I did the first State of the Union for real estate investors at Harvard back in 2005 when I focused on trying to help people understand that the market was going to crash, which of course nobody believed me, and I got thrown out of the room. But I've been back several times because we've been able to call what's going to happen in the market. And those market cycles have allowed me to make 4 predictions in the last 20 years. And the one right now that really is resonating with why we wrote the book now is all about you want to control real estate. You don't want to own it. Because when you own real estate, you have all the downside and the upside associated with ownership. But if you control it, you have none of the risk of ownership and all of the benefits. So that was a long-winded answer to your question, but that's why the book and that's why the workshop.
Love it. I want to ask a bonus question. So let's talk about the money game real quick because you teased it. And I think there's a lot of importance there. Could you explain what you mean by the money game?
Sure. I'm trying to remember when my kids were 5 and 7, I drew 2 triangles on the napkin at the kitchen table. And the first one I called happiness. What do you need to be or do to be happy? And there's really 3 things. You've got to make money, do good, and have fun. Those are the 3 things that you need to do in order to be happy or happier. I always ask entrepreneurs that are successful, which is the most important? And roughly 2/3 of them say doing good. And about 1/3 of them say having fun. And very few people say making money. And I say, hold on, it's all about making money. Because if you started in a trailer park where I started and you realize that the only way I emerged from all of that is to make more money that allowed me to do more good, have more fun, and oh, by the way, make more money to do more good, have more fun. That was the first triangle that I drew for my kids. The second one is about making money and winning the money game. What do you need to do to win the money game? Real simple. You got to generate cash, otherwise known as income. You've got to accumulate wealth, otherwise known as assets that both throw off income and go up in value. And you got to keep it. You got to make sure that you don't lose it and you don't pay more than your fair share in taxes. You've got to generate passive and recurring income in addition to active. You've got to have assets that are more than just your home and your business. The bottom line is, once I figured it out, took me 85% of my life, but once I was able to figure it out and share it with my sons, when I was adding a zero in my 40s and again in my 50s, my kids were doing it in their 20s. And my whole thesis was, I want them to outgrow me. Who doesn't as a parent? We want our kids and our grandkids to outgrow us. And what I also realized is that I don't know everything and they need greater access. They need access to greater people, smarter people with more money, people with better ideas, all the things that I couldn't provide them. But while we were working together, we were building this family office that became a bigger family office and yet a bigger one. And now we get to make money, do good, have fun, and shift our emphasis from making money, which we'll never eliminate, right? We happen to be pretty good at it, so why would we give it up? But now we can do more good by helping more people. And so at the end of the day, I hope that answers your question, but it's that money game that all of us on this call ought to be focused on. Because if you can win that, it opens up everything else, because financial freedom drives time freedom, which drives global freedom. So I haven't needed money for a long time, but I'm able to do it anywhere in the world and never have to worry about returns, although I'm focused on optimizing both financial and fulfillment. And it's worked out really well.
So one word you mentioned in there was the word access. And I almost wore the t-shirt today. I probably should have. And so I was at your last Access Insider event. I think that was October-ish of last year down at the Biltmore in Arizona. I'm excited for the one coming up in July at San Diego. We haven't really talked about it, but there is something else you're doing and I'm excited about it. I know when I was in the room, amazing research shared. So you shared so much insight. amazing people and amazing opportunities all in one place and beautiful location, amazing food, amazing people. So talk to me about this Access Insider group that you have. What is it? How's it work? Who might be a good fit?
Sure. First of all, it's simple. Already successful business owners basically get to cheat off our family office. So if you're a successful entrepreneur, and by that I mean you're making a healthy six figures, maybe even seven figures a year. And so you're generating a lot of active income from your business, but you haven't cracked the code on passive and recurring, which isn't an easy code to crack. But once you crack it, your money starts making money in your sleep. If you haven't accumulated wealth, if you haven't kept as much as you should have, basically what we do is we present all our research. That takes roughly 3 hours or so. We share our investment strategies, our blueprints, and our opportunities. And we share our framework for optimizing yourself and your family. Now, the key in all of this is that you've got the right people in the room. Remember, our mantra, both for our family and, by the way, for our Access Insiders community, is to do fewer, bigger things with fewer, better people through fewer, deeper relationships. So if you're not a fewer, better, why would you be there? Because we don't want to dilute the value of our group. We want to improve the value of our group, but we want people who are already killing it in what they do, but they don't know what they don't know around generating passive and recurring income, accumulating more wealth, and keeping it by not losing it, not paying more than their fair share in taxes. And the beauty of all of this, I know you said me, but it's not me. It's me plus my sons, plus our network, where we have an amazing network. And we're going to over index at this meeting on AI and on our Stanford network. We call it the Stanford Mafia, because my youngest son, Josh, went to Stanford undergrad and grad. My other son, Blake, went to Berkeley. And between their networks, we're able to help add a zero to our family and by extension for others. So that's what our Access community is all about. And it all came because we were doing our Just Be the Bank workshop and someone wanted to ask us, what do you guys do and how can I do more with you? And so we created Access. And the next thing you know, we got all the people that show up. I think we'll have over 150 people at this event.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't. I've been to a lot of events, and what I'll say is Dave puts on a great event. The people in the room, everyone I met was just absolutely amazing. And what really blew my mind, Dave, and I think you talked about this with what you have access to, is when the opportunities were presented. I don't know if I've ever seen better opportunities. And I see probably a pitch deck a day from someone somewhere. And everyone that got up and talked about it, and I know there was a lot in health at the last event and real estate, and it was just like mind boggling. Like just stuff that you're just like, they're doing that. And then what's great is it's, oh, by the way, you can get involved. And you're like, wait a second. I was already blown away and now I can participate.
Yeah, I always ask three questions. And what you're referring to is the Shark Tank aspect. So there's the opportunity to learn what's coming next from our research. Then there's the opportunity to co-invest or invest with us. And then there's the opportunity to optimize your family. Well, in the investment side of it, we happen to have access to things other people just don't, to people that other people don't. And it's the fact that we've got that access that allows us to invite really badass founders to come and pitch us like a Shark Tank, only it's not Susie who just came up with the new cupcake and Mr. Wonderful is going to offer it up to his wedding database. It's not like that. These are badass founders that were educated by the best schools, that are often repeat founders. They've already had a big exit and they come and pitch to our community. And I always ask three questions. And by the way, there's nothing superfluous about the event. There's no like pitch run to the back of the room stuff. There's no obligation to invest. We don't care. We don't keep score. We don't even take a management fee. Our goal is to help people get to where they're going quicker. So, as you remember, there's always three questions. After a founder presents, or co-founders, if there's more than one, after they present, I ask three questions. One, on a 1 to 10, with 10 being the best, what did you think? There's a QR code. Scan it and tell me what you thought. and it's almost always a 9 point something. Number two, would you be interested in investing? Yes or no? Now, you don't have to commit to any amount right now or even have to write a check, but is this something you're legitimately interested in investing in? And don't tell me what you think I want to hear because that doesn't serve either of us. Only tell me if you're interested, yes or no. There's no maybe. You can't be half pregnant, and maybe's a horrible word anyway. And number three, if we do the due diligence and it serves you, and you feel like you've got an opportunity here, what's the maximum you'd be willing to invest? That's it. We ask those three questions, we add it all up, and if there's enough interest, we do something, and if we don't. And we've done that now 5 times out of over 80 companies, and they've all been outsized returns. So anyway, I think that answers your question.
I want to go a level deeper because it blew my mind just sitting in the room on that aspect. And I appreciated that. You mentioned one thing in your previous answer on optimizing yourself and your family. And I think you have a 12-month kind of plan for that. Could you give us a quick snapshot into that? I found
Sure.
that pretty insightful.
Yeah, most people don't think this deeply about this and call me crazy, but I do. There are 12 areas of your life, and you probably don't realize that they're happening, but they're all happening at once. And some of them you're doing well in, and some of them you're not. But there are 12 areas, starting with your health and fitness, then your intellectual life, and I can rattle them all off, but there's your social life, there's your love relationship, there's your parenting life, there's your emotional life, your financial life, your career, your life vision, your character. All these things are happening all at the same time. Fortunately, there are 12 months in a year. It works out perfect because we and our insiders study each one of those each month, starting with health and fitness because it's the most important. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. But you got to have intellectual fitness too. So your intellectual life is number two. So in January, health, in February, your intellectual life, and then the rest of the year unfolds. And some of those are influenced by others, where you get this multiplicative benefit. We teamed up with a dear friend of mine who I learned much of this from in January of 2012, and then taught my sons. I had him teach my sons in July. All of that led us to create our family office because we realized that to get outsized results, we need to invest, not spend, invest time in things that will move the needle for our family. So all of that is in our legacy library. We share it with all of our insiders. And it's how we believe they're going to add zeros, either in terms of money, in terms of time, or in terms of the global flexibility to run their backpack business, as we call it. Because ultimately, you don't want to be constrained by anything. You want to have a backpack business where you can optimize the amount of wealth that you create, the amount of income that you generate, and the happiness that your family has from a freaking backpack. And that's what I do. So I'm at my home now in Florida. I've got my home in Puerto Rico and my home in Thailand, but I could be anywhere doing what we're doing right now or anything else I want to do.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. I know when you talked about that, and we didn't go too deep originally, but over time we've gone deeper in that. And I love that approach because it gives you that focus every month to just move and be a small percent better in each of those buckets year over year. We've covered a lot of ground. We've talked private lending, we've talked the pillars, we've talked access. What haven't we talked about? Is there anything we've missed that is sitting on your heart or your mind?
Let me think of a couple of things. The first thing is that time is the real currency. We all think money is, but it really is time. And especially once you have all the money you'll ever need, which everyone on this call, I want to have all the money you'll ever need and then some. I happen to have more wealth than time. That's the good news and the bad news. And I love to talk to people where there's a fit and we can help each other. But honestly, I got zero time for sitting around shooting the shit. Winners invest time and losers spend time. So you've got to be really anal on the time that you invest and the people you invest it with, which leads to a second one, which is if you're comfortable right now, if you think life is good, you're in exactly the wrong place. Because when I was comfortable, and every time I've become comfortable, I've realized comfort is the silent thief. It literally steals your dreams. Comfortable is where dreams go to die. And once I realized that was the case, I realized I needed to be more. I needed to be on a quest for more, not just be okay with comfortable. And about 30 years ago, I was sitting in a cubicle back when I was in corporate America, and I wrote down 4 words: grateful but not content. And that has really driven me all of my life. Every morning I wake up, I'm grateful. I'm on a call with you now, I'm grateful. I'm investing in what I hope will make a difference in other people's life, but I am far from content. I always say I don't need anything, but I just want everything. So being on a quest for more, I think, is really important. And I think I said this earlier, but for you parents out there, for you grandparents out there, what you don't learn, your kids will inherit. And what's more, what you don't become, your kids will inherit. My dad did the best job he could. He was my John Wayne, but I wanted to outgrow him. I wanted to be out of a trailer park. And until you make a commitment to more, you'll never ever get there, because commitment isn't this nonsensical thing about doing what you say you're going to do. No, commitment is the promise that the conscious mind makes to the soul. Before I make a commitment, I have to think about it deeply. And after I've thought about it deeply, I've got 3 answers: yes, no, or maybe. I'll never say maybe, because it's the worst word maybe in the English language, because now you're wrapped around an axle of something that you're never going to do, but you felt like somebody else would hold you accountable if you said no. So you said maybe. No is the best answer you can give. Why? Because it gives you time for the few yeses in your life. And that's really what I've tried to focus on and help my sons realize and help my grandkids realize. In fact, I just did a presentation, a keynote address called The 10 Things I Want My Grandkids and Kids to Know Before I Go. And it was probably the best received presentation I've ever given anywhere in all of my life. But it's because we all want more, and we want our family to outgrow us. And so that was probably more than you expected, but there you go. That's all I got.
I'm glad you talked about the 10 things because I know when you came off the cruise, which I think is when you were talking about that presentation, you were excited. Like you were fired up. Like you're usually fired up. I don't think I've ever met with you and you're not, but you were like another level. And you're like, man, this presentation just landed so well, but it's so real. And even today, everything you've talked about, like it's lived experience, it's practiced. There's no theory here. This is all real, tangible stuff you and your sons and your family and the people around you have been through and done.
Exactly. And the funny thing about that cruise you're referring to, there were 460 entrepreneurs that were really badass on this cruise. And I only had 20 minutes to present this, and someone spent too long on my intro, and therefore I had 18 minutes to take what I created as a 90-minute presentation for centimillionaires. If you had 100 million or more in net worth, that was the group I spoke to, about 250 of them a couple of years ago. And that's when I created the presentation, because what are you going to teach people with that much money? Not how to make money. They've got that figured out, but they're focused on legacy. They're focused on all the things that they want to share. And while we don't try to monetize that, I mean, there's no book or course or any of that stuff, it's central to what we as a family office believe. And I wanted my 10 kids and or rephrase that. I wanted to tell my kids and grandkids the 10 things that I wanted them to know before I go. And got a standing ovation every time I presented it. And that doesn't happen often. I'm not saying I'm great at presenting, because I've never been trained in it. I just talk like today. But at the end of the day, it resonated with people. And in 18 minutes, people really loved it. So anyway, that was it.
That's awesome. So let's recap. The book is available. It's behind Dave, Just Be the Bank. You can grab it on Amazon in all formats. There's the Just Be the Bank workshop if you want to lean into how do we do private lending, the how part. And then if you want to be surrounded by amazing people doing amazing things and really level up out of zero, find the optimization, access insider event. Again, I love that. And I'm really looking forward to July and all the events after that. Any other ways people can connect with you or get involved? We've got the book, the workshop, Access Insiders. Any other way to connect with you, Dave?
Yeah, I think just drop me an email. Look, if you're serious, not just curious, if you're looking seriously to add a zero and you're already successful, but you haven't cracked the code on trying to figure out how to make money in your sleep. And if you want to be around a badass community of already successful people, we don't let the masses of asses in the room. Everybody's going to be equal to or better than you. And if you believe that that is where you can get leapfrog moments, where you can take your family and yourself to another level where you can add a zero, then reach out to me. And I think the easiest email to remember would be dave@justbethebank.com. So that's not too difficult to spell, justbethebank.com. So dave@justbethebank.com will get you to me. I could give you my office manager's contact information and other things, but I think that's probably the easiest way. And I promise not to ignore you. Just curious, not curious.
That's awesome. Gary will put all this stuff when we post the recording. So if you're listening to this, just look below. We'll have all the links to all the stuff for Dave. Jason, Gary, I'd love to open it up. We have a couple minutes left. Any questions, anything that's going on? We have Dave, so let's hit him with a couple questions if you guys have it. If not, we'll wrap up. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, talk about timing. This is probably what I needed to hear, to be honest. I'm definitely in that active income, trying to figure out what to do next type of bucket. Fortunate, but also complacent, which you've actually knocked me out of that groove. I jotted that down, which is a great quote. So first off, thank you for being here and thank you for your timing. I think the biggest thing I want to ask is when you have someone who is doing quite well, wife is doing quite well as well. She has a consultancy that she does work with, but they're too busy to even think. So the only thing they do is they just stuff more in the 401k. And when they're done with that, they stuff it into a brokerage under the same strategy, buying the same stock, just under a different umbrella because they don't know any better. What would you recommend that busy couple to do next?
Yeah, there are two things that we need to talk about. The first one is busy, and the second one is basically a 401k or Wall Street. You probably don't know this, but I literally did another keynote on leveraging a self-directed IRA and investing in Main Street. That is alternative investing as opposed to Wall Street. What you don't know is over a 20 to a 40-year period, 55% of all of the wealth that you're accumulating over and above the principal you put into your 401k, 55% is stripped in fees. So it's awfully hard to become financially successful when you're always dragging a boat anchor, where you always have other people with their hand out, not their hand up, where they're always focused on how can they get into your pocket for management fees, for disposition fees, for commissions, for acquisition. All these things that other people charge for are stripping your ability. So let me ask you a question, Jason. And you've heard the first part of this question, but I promise you haven't heard the second. I'm going to give you two options. I'm going to give you a penny that doubles in value every day for the next 30 days, and I'll give you that amount in 30 days, or I'll give you $1 million in cold hard cash right now. Which would you choose?
Penny.
Why? Because you've heard before that it compounds, and at the end of 30 days, it's worth $5.4 million. Here's what no one tells you. Now, except for people who've heard me talk about this, no one's heard it before. I'm going to give you the same penny that doubles in value every day for 30 days, but it's taxed like you are every day and your wife at, say, 28%. 28% marginal tax bracket. Federal, state, honorable, it's probably more, but let's just say 28%. I'll give you the same penny that doubles in value every day, but is taxed every day at 28%. Or I'll give you the $1 million in cold hard cash. Which would you like?
I don't know.
$1 million in cold hard cash today is $1 million in cold hard cash today. The penny that doubles in value every day for the next 30 days is worth $5.4 million, but if it's taxed at 28% each day, it's worth $67,000. No one believes that until they see the spreadsheet. But I've created a spreadsheet that shows you that 98.7% of your compounded wealth is stripped in taxes. That is why I have a self-directed Roth IRA, as do my sons, as do my grandkids. That is why I live in Puerto Rico. One of my other sons lives in Puerto Rico, where I pay 4% income tax, and my capital gains interest income and dividend income is zero. So my question for you is, let's assume for a minute that you make, between you and your wife, $1 million a year. How would you like to keep $1 million a year?
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. The bottom line is, how would you like to keep virtually everything you ever make? How long does it take you to add a zero? How long does it take you to accumulate wealth if you're in a position where you're paying the lowest amount in taxes that's practical? So we're being recorded, so I'm not going to talk about my tax rate, but suffice to say, I get to keep pretty much everything that I make, and I make a lot. So that's that part, the busy part. Sorry, dude, I'm calling you out on that. We all got 168 hours in a week. So the question is, are you spending it or are you investing it? And if you take an anal approach to your 168 hours like I do, and realize that time is the real currency, because some of those hours are completely worthless and some are even worse than worthless because they're costing you not just opportunity cost, but time with your wife, with your kids, whatever it happens to be. Until you take a serious approach to really your time as opposed to your money, you're not going to make more money and you're not going to do more good and you're not going to have more fun because you haven't invested the time. People always say this, and again, Jason, you haven't asked the question, so I'm not dissing on you, but people always say, I spend quality time with my family. And I tell them, you're full of shit. You don't spend quality time with anybody. The most you can do is invest quantity time and hope for the quality moments to appear. So my son texted me this weekend that his son, my grandson, Carter, hit his first home run. And my son is a coach like I was of 30 or 40 of their teams. I told him, you invested so much quantity time in Carter that finally the quality moment appeared. And if you hadn't invested that time, you don't deserve the quality. So anyway, back at you. Hopefully that was a good answer, but a long-winded one. Sorry about that, bro.
I appreciate it though.
Awesome. Gary did give me a little message, but we are running up on time, so I will hold that question. I'm sure Jason has some follow-up questions too. You can connect with Dave. Dave, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I know you're busy. I know you've got a full schedule. There's so much value that you've shared with us, which is what I experience every time I'm around you. So just thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate you, man. And thanks to you, Jason. Thanks to you, Gary. Looking forward to communicating with everybody within the ACES community. And kudos to you, Devin, for having created a badass group.